This program is underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art. Carlos Furniture, a family-owned business, has been providing furniture, appliances, and household accessories since 1997. The flagship store on St. Croix and another on St. Thomas are both open for in-store shopping and are able to ship to various locations in the Caribbean.
and viewers like you. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Bookcase. I'm your host, Shawna Richards, a sometime writer and a longtime reader. I invite you to join me as we explore the bookcase and celebrate Virgin Islands authors and talent. Each week on the Bookcase, we'll introduce you to a local author and learn more about them and their work. A storyteller lives in each of us, and I am so excited to give our homegrown storytellers a chance to tell their story. Tonight's selection from the Bookcase is the United States of Hamilton, and I'm honored to welcome its author, Rueben Dowling. Rueben, welcome to the Bookcase. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You're new to the Bookcase, so I'd like you to take some time and introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Rueben Dowling, and I was born and raised here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. And I have published 4 books, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, welcome. Is the United States of Hamilton your first book?
No, this happens to be my 4th book. Well, my first writing professionally was in 2004. I published my first book, which was Mango Madness. And it was well received here in the island and really encouraged me to keep going.
What inspired you? What inspired you to say, I can write a book?
Well, I really was inspired by a teacher. I was taking some college courses, and a teacher told me, she said, Dowling, I think you can write, you can speak real good, but you can write better than you talk. She said, when I read your essays, it's like I'm in a little mini movie, and I think you got a gift for writing. And so I always held on to that, and I decided to try a thing.
So trying a thing led to you writing
Mango Madness.
Mango Madness.
Yes.
And now the United States of Hamilton is your 4th book.
Yes.
What motivated you to write about the United States of Hamilton? And tell us about the story and where that title came from.
Well, what inspired me to write about Hamilton is I grew up here in Christiansted, and our ancestors always told us that he was not white.
And we're talking about Alexander Hamilton.
Yes, they always told us that he was not white, that stories that was passed down from generation to generation, that his mother was a red-skinned black woman like you, and his father was a white man. He wasn't a white boy, you know what I mean? So one day, me and my brother checked out the $10 bill real good, and we felt that they were wrong, because the image on the $10 bill is so European. And then many years later, somebody sent me an actual painting of Hamilton that was done by Charles Wilson Peale. And it was the first painting that he actually sat and posed for. And when I saw the painting, which is in New York Public Library collection, I was convinced that a lot of what my family was saying, a lot of what was passed down about his racial lineage must be true when I saw the image. And I decided to start doing some research about Hamilton's life at that time.
How long did it take you to write the United States of Hamilton?
It took me about 3 years. I think that...
Why so long?
just research. I wanted everything in the book to be authentic, and I wanted anybody to challenge me on what I say. So rather than going by hearsay or whatever, and I did a lot of reading, just like, and also, I gotta admit too, there was a story that I had about the way he died.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had told me a story about how Hamilton died. And it was Rueben Dowling who told me the story. And he told me that Hamilton didn't die in a duel. They killed him because he was black. And so I wanted to get to the duel and research and see.
So do you dive into that? Do you get into that in more detail? Because the subtitle is The Eternal Assassination
of
Alexander Hamilton.
Right. Well, Alexander Hamilton, as we know, he was killed in a duel.
Mm-hmm.
And from my investigation, he was obviously assassinated. And the title for my book, I just thought it was sad that if his blackness had something to do with him dying, him losing his life, I think it's so wrong to portray him as white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like an internal assassination. They keep killing him. Every time you see the $10 bill with Hamilton posed as a white man.
But do you think in the time that he lived,
yes,
that he would have accomplished so much if he had been perceived as a man of color, as a black man?
No, he never would.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, like the story we got was that he had a brother named James, and who was an older brother, who lived here with his mother and him. And James was too kinky to pass for a white dude, but he was the brother that our ancestors felt he could pass, he might be able to pass.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if he didn't pass for a white dude, of course he wouldn't know. He might not have amounted to anything back in that era.
Who did you write this book for? And obviously it comes at a time when, people know more about the life of Alexander Hamilton. There's a best-selling, award-winning musical based on the life of Alexander Hamilton.
Yes.
So who did you write this book for?
Well, like I said, at the time that I wrote the book, and I have published my book before the musical came out.
Okay.
My book was published. You can check the records. When the musical came out, I was waiting for copyright.
Mm-hmm.
I had already applied for copyright at the Library of Congress and all that. And once I applied, I started publishing, you know what I mean? So anyway, I just felt that Hamilton was a brother from the Caribbean. He was from Nevis. And there's nobody from the Caribbean ever wrote about Hamilton. And I have read books written about Hamilton, and I could have tell that a lot of people wrote books about him who didn't like him. And I felt that, and they put their opinions in it. And so I felt that one of us from the Caribbean needed to tell his brother's story. And since he lived here on St. Croix, and had a big association.
But do you have a better understanding? Do you think you have a better understanding of Hamilton because you're from St. Croix, because you're a black man from St. Croix? Do you see yourself in his story?
Well, I do have a better understanding because, number one, he was from the Caribbean, like you said, and he sort of grew up here on St. Croix, even though he came here when he was 5. And so I don't know, I kind of relate to him as one of us. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's one of our people, and it's very important for one of us to tell his story to.
What are things in this story that you thought were really important to tell about Hamilton from your perspective as a black man?
Well, there's, in learning about Hamilton, it's impossible to learn about Hamilton and not learn about American history, early American history. When he went to North America, there was no United States of America. Mm-hmm. And so he was part of the founding of the United States of America.
And part of the revolution.
Yes, part of the Revolutionary War against England and everything. So in telling the story, I learned a lot about American history, a lot that I didn't know. I didn't know he was so caught up in it. And I learned how to see it from another point of view. Like, I think that American history is so, like, whitewashed. When you read American history book, they don't mention certain people that was there all the time.
Well, you know, history is subjective. It's someone's telling of it.
Yes.
So someone may read your book and say, well, that's Mr. Dowling's opinion. Yeah.
But I challenge you to, you know, because like I said, I did a lot of research and fact-checked everything that I write. And so, you know, I think I can say that everything I told about Hamilton was very authentic. I think I told a real good story. And I got to fess up that in learning about him, I learned to respect and admire and really love that brother, the boy from Nevis.
So before you started writing about Hamilton,
Yes.
did you know any of his story other than, you know, he grew up here, you know, he's on the $10 bill? Did you know what made you want to dive deeper to get better understanding?
Well, I know about his mother too, and I know where her grave was, and that she was buried here. And like I said, they always told us she wasn't white. She was, you know, a black woman. So I was really curious about studying. That part really drove me, his racial identity of him and his mother, that really inspired me to dig, to find out some truth about that.
During your research, what are some of the things that you learned that showed you that you were going in the right direction?
Well, number one was I didn't know his mother did 5 months in prison in the fort. And that kind of inspired me, you know, because I felt that a white woman wouldn't have did 5 months in the fort. And when I researched who else was in there, it was a lot of black slaves. So I didn't think they would have put a white woman in there for 5 months. And so I was just driven, and I did not know. I did not know that he did so many great things when I started his story. I just knew he was the treasurer, the first treasurer of the United States, and he's on the $10 bill. And so I was curious. There's two people on the money, him and Benjamin Franklin, that were not presidents. And so I was just curious about him and wanted to find out how a brother from Nevis get on the $10 bill too.
So how did that lead you down the pathway now of to his death and the circumstances of his death?
Well,
take us down that path from you finding out about his life. So you really studied him from cradle to grave.
Yes, I took 3 years to learn about this brother. Anyway, like I said, someone told me years ago that he didn't die in a duel. It wasn't fair and square. And they explained to me that the story they told me was 20 years after Hamilton died, one of the seconds in the duel, you know, like I'm allowed a second, one of the seconds were dying, and he had a deathbed confession that say that he can change history with his deathbed confession. He said Hamilton didn't die in a duel. They put blank in his gun. And both of the seconds, the one for Hamilton and the other guy were in cahoots, and they put blank in Hamilton's gun. So
was Hamilton a victim in this? Was he the
Well, yes, I
victim?
think he was assassinated. If they put a blank in his gun, then it wasn't fair. It was not a duel. A duel is fair and square. Everybody got a chance. And with a blank in his gun, he didn't have a chance. So
with his history,
yes,
why usually when we see great men
yes,
be assassinated, it's to I guess, take them out the picture.
Yes.
Right? So does your theory of Hamilton's assassination that you cover in your book, The United States of Hamilton, does it support that?
Yes, of course. I think that the fact that, to me, everything I learned about Hamilton, I think he was the first president for 12 years. He was
because Washington relied so
because
heavily
Washington
on
had him. Washington signed everything he put on his desk, and so I think he was like the nation had a great start because of him. And then John Adams, who was the second president, sort of did the same thing. He let Alexander Hamilton. He kept George Washington's staff, and he let Alexander Hamilton call all the shots. So I think that for that 12 years, America, as a new country, did not involve in the slave trade. Even though slavery was there, the government did not involve in the slave trade. And within months of the death of Alexander Hamilton, the U.S. government got in the slave trade. And I think one of the reasons he was feared was that he started the first movement in America for the abolishment of slavery. And that was one of his goals, to see slavery abolished. And I think that he was in the way.
So would you call your book a biography, a history book? How would you classify your book, The United States of Hamilton?
Well, to me, for me, doing the research, it was like early American history 101. You know what I mean? So I think that if you really want to know true early American history and how the nation was founded and built, and I think it's a great book for early American history.
So in The United States of Hamilton, you look at slavery.
Yes.
You talk a lot. You write a lot about Hamilton's confidence and his genius, and you touch on that throughout the story. Was that intentional? Did you see that to be a recurring theme in helping to give the reader a better understanding of who Alexander Hamilton was?
Well, he did a lot of writing. He was a writer. And he didn't have a laptop. You know, they were writing with ink. And when I read about like the Federalist Papers and certain things that he wrote, and he didn't have the virtue of a laptop that you can go back and erase this and
Or Google.
Yes, right. So I'm amazed. I was, like I said, one time in 5th grade, a teacher told me I was a genius, and he filled my head. And then when I started reading about Hamilton, I felt so kind of small. If I think I was a genius, who he be? You know what I mean? So when I studied his life, I was filled with admiration, respect. And I came to the conclusion that ain't no greater man walked in this hemisphere than Alexander Hamilton. I think I hold him up that high.
There's a section in your book where you said that it was hard for you to write about the duel and his death. Yes. Why was that so hard for you to write about something that happened over 200 years ago?
You know, I question myself about it a lot. I try to, I guess I was so caught up in his life and admiring him. And so when I was doing research about how he died and how he was killed, it really was sad. It really, and I'm still questioning myself why it affected me the way it did. But it really, the way he died really touched me personally.
Is there a favorite passage from The United States of Hamilton that you can share with our audience?
Well, I think most of this book, like say, of all the books I've written so far, this is my favorite one. And so I think most pages in here are my favorite passages, you know what I mean? But I can just read a few paragraphs from my introduction.
Okay.
Okay. Please allow me to tell you the story of this special island boy, born to a black mother and a white father. Please let me share with you the life of Alexander Hamilton, who migrated from St. Croix, Virgin Island to North America on a ship filled with barrels of sugar. Learn about the teenage literary genius who provided the sweet words needed to convince the colonists to fight Great Britain for independence. The battlefield courage of Alexander Hamilton was legendary in the Revolutionary War. Alexander Hamilton went on to create the United States of America. It took him several years to convince the people to form one big government under a constitution. The Constitution Convention was planned, directed, and produced by Alexander Hamilton. Everything good written in the Constitution was his idea. Alexander Hamilton invented the federal government and then went on to build it from scratch, despite tremendous opposition every step of the way. American history teaches that George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. It doesn't teach the children the truth that Alexander Hamilton invented the United States Coast Guard, Customs, the Veteran Administration, West Point Military Academy, and the IRS. Hamilton, the mathematical genius, also invented the American banking system that is copied throughout the world, along with the Bank of New York and the Central Bank and the U.S. Mint, the American dollar, the stock market, the stock exchange, along with Wall Street dynamics. And I think this is enough, but I just think that I'm amazed that he accomplished so much, just one island boy from Nevis.
And speaking of Island Boy, in your book,
Yes.
there was one line that really stuck with me that you wrote.
Yes.
You wrote that he believed in ascension by merit
Yes.
and not birthright.
Right.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, it's plain. Like, there's a statement that he also made about giving a chance, and I think he was speaking about himself. He said, them black slaves, if given a chance, y'all would be surprised what all they can do.
But you also wrote
Yes.
that Alexander Hamilton did not get to be Moses and set his mother's people free.
Yes, I believe that from my research, I think that was his greatest ambition, to free the slaves in North America. And so I think that he himself, I think his life was not so complete because he did not get to free the black people.
When you are writing, and when you sat down to write this book, was there anything about Hamilton's story that you left out?
No, I don't. When I was writing the book, I don't know, I was digging. I was trying to, some of the facts that I found, it was always amazing because I didn't know he'd accomplished so much in his life. And so I didn't leave out nothing. There was nothing that I think that, like I said, sometimes it's hard to admit that you meet somebody and they're a better man than you.
And sometimes you meet people and they don't live up to your expectations either.
Right. And Hamilton did have some imperfections and flaws just like the rest of us. He was not a perfect guy.
So in researching
Yes.
and learning about Hamilton, and when you read and learned more about his flaws, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel human because he made mistakes. You remember he had an affair and he showed his human side that he was imperfect. And sometimes when I read about his, what I might term as a mistake that he made, you get a little disheartened, but then you realize that he's not perfect.
But wouldn't you say that one of Hamilton's biggest flaws, I guess what makes him human, but certainly one of his biggest flaws was that he was arrogant, as other people have written about him?
Well, I never saw it as arrogant, because arrogant sort of entails that you're better than who you think you be. You know what I mean? And Hamilton was in company with, John Adams and Franklin and a lot of people. And a lot of them took part in slavery. A lot of those guys owned slaves. Alexander Hamilton didn't own no slaves. And I think that he showed more principle as a leader. He showed more principle than a lot of them. And I think there's sometimes you got a right to feel that you're something. And I think that without self-confidence, it's hard to achieve much. And I think that what people call arrogance was just self-confidence and knowing that knowing that you're a better man, knowing deep inside you're a better man than a lot of people that surround you.
Is that, so you just talked about writing.
Yes.
Do you think that your writing is informed by your confidence and belief in yourself? And if so, what are some tips that you would have for people looking at this program who think that they might have a story in them that they want to tell?
Well, you might agree with me that to write, you need to read. You got to read a lot to be a good writer. And something that I want to say, I heard an advice given to me one time about write for an audience of one. And sometimes you can't write about what other people think. You can't worry about that when you're writing. You can't necessarily try to be politically correct all the time. And I think that it's important to tell it your way.
And that is certainly a very practical and inspirational tip for our storytellers. It's been a pleasure to learn more about our local talent, Rueben Dowling, and his book, The United States of Hamilton. For more information on this book or any of the books featured on this program, visit our website at www.wtjx.org. We appreciate your support of our local authors, and we'll see you next week when we take another book from the Bookcase.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters. This program was underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art
and viewers like you.